The airport, privatizing Lambert Airport. What? There was a story in the St. Louis Business Journal this week that said that somebody out there might be willing to pay $2.5 billion to buy Lambert Airport and run it for the city. Jacob Kern wrote the story, economic development editor for the St. Louis Business Journal. Jacob, thanks for joining us here on KTRS.
Hey, McGraw, how's it going?
So your article points to that you alluded to the fact in your story that there are people around the country and around the world who are salivating to get their hands on Lambert Airport.
Yeah, well, there are private operators who run airports all over the world. Many, I think it was at least half of the European airports are privatized, so it isn't a new idea in these other places. It's just that it hasn't really caught on here. And that's one reason that the price could be driven up here is because an FAA pilot program that allows for it hasn't really been used, except the only big airport that has done it is San Juan, Puerto Rico.
So what is it? What are these people seeing as a benefit? Why would some big company want to come in and buy it for all of this money? What are they seeing?
Well, they would come in and lease it. What they're seeing is that there's tons of money in these infrastructure funds, and they want a consistent return. So what they see is that, okay, Lambert has way less traffic than it used to, right? But it still has 7 million in-plane passengers every year. That's not going anywhere. St. Louis still has major business interests and, 2 million residents. So what they see is that they have this major airport that they could be collecting the landing fees off of and all of that. So, and they also think that they can get the non-aeronautical revenue, so not the landing fees, way up. They think that they can get the concessionaires and all that kinds of money to be going way up more than what the city has it now.
Yeah, because that's the $64,000 question, right? Everyone would probably agree in theory that a private business runs things better than a government entity. So the question is, the idea is that this private business can run it better than the current setup now.
Right, and there was just a meeting of the city airport work group yesterday, and somebody who was presenting at that for the city talked about that, in San Juan it was a success. I mean, nobody would dispute that the airport looks different in a good way after Oak Tree and Azur, a Mexico firm, took over. Now, of course, the circumstances are different. I don't think that anyone thinks that our airport was being run the same way that San Juan was. They had different leadership coming in for each political cycle. Rhonda Ham-Newberg has been leading Lambert for a long time. So that's a little bit different.
Yeah. Would a private entity, Jacob Kern, economic development editor at the St. Louis Business Journal, who wrote a story about privatizing Lambert, could a private entity come in and do things that the public entity couldn't do? That's an interesting question. I think that the answer is probably yes on certain things. Here's the idea. The idea is that if I'm a private operator that has these, say I'm Ferrovial and I already have which is a Spanish firm, and I already have a major interest in Heathrow, which they do in London. The idea is that I can utilize my relationships there to say, hey, look, I also am now operating Lambert. Can you work with me to add a flight there? So the idea is that these companies, may have relationships that
Rhonda and the city of St. Louis just do not,
right.
and never would. It's a multinational firm versus the city of St. Louis.
Yeah. They're now in negotiations, or at least talking about writing this sort of proposal. What's the timeline on this? When are we going to see something concrete to sort of debate this?
Well, the group for the city kind of still says, oh, if we're going forward with this, but they've taken the key vote. The key vote was to hire the consultants to help the city. By the way, there's at least 16 of them, and a couple of them seemed a little dubious because they had political connections to some of the people who were taking votes. But it seems to me that they are going to move forward, and they are going to put out the request for qualifications for the bidders, and then ultimately then they would do the proposal. That would happen. That would start, I think, early next year.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, which launched, not all that long ago, could take at least 24 months. It's not a fast process.
Sure. But
also yeah, go ahead.
But the $2.5 billion, that could do a lot to sort of help St. Louis City in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of put a caveat on it because it could include wiping out Lambert's debt, which is like $600 million. You'll remember the runway that is not used, the
right.
$1 billion runway. That's where that debt comes from. Who knows if it will be a completely upfront payment or if it will come, in
over
installments over 30 or 40 years. That number could also include them saying, well, we have to completely reconfigure the airport and that's going to cost $1 billion or whatever.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that will all come up front, but yes, the city would get a major amount of money. The city has pretty massive debt outside of the airport, and it has very serious pension obligations and massive infrastructure needs. So if they spent it the right way, it could definitely help them.
Yeah, but people are definitely talking. Jacob Kern, economic development editor with the St. Louis Business Journal. Jacob, thanks for your time. Good story. Thanks.
Have a good one.